Good afternoon and welcome to Manor Solutions Connect Symposium. Thank you today for attending the Dynamics GP reporting options. I will be your host, Caitlin Watts, and your presenter today is Dave Feenstra. Working with GP for almost 20 years, it specializes in making GP do what it's natively not supposed to. So at this time, I will hand over the control to Mr. Feenstra there and go ahead and take it from there. Have a great session.
All right. Thanks a lot, Kate. Welcome to today's session. Obviously, our topic today is Dynamics GP reporting options. Anybody who's been using GP for a while knows that there's about 50 ways to get to everything in the system. And also, since GP is based on SQL Server and we have access to all of the data in the tables, there is a myriad of ways to get to any of the data in the system. So what we're going to look at today is just some of the types of queries and data that you can get to, and kind of take some of the mystery away around the best ways and tools to use to get to some of that data. So the agenda that for today is going to be looking at the three basic types of reports that people are trying to get out of GP. And those types are general inquiries, which you just are trying to look up data. You know, there's the inquiry screens in GP, but you're just trying to grab some data. You're not trying to format any reports. And so we're going to look at Smart List, which is kind of the default built-in tool that GP has for retrieving data. We're going to look at Smart View, which is a paid option, but it is very cool. And I'll show you a couple of the key features of Smart View. We're going to look at Excel reports, which comes standard with GP, plus you can make your own. And then we're just going to look at some of the standard GP reports that are in there, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, but I got one little wrinkle I'm going to show you on there. And then the second type of report is typically financial reports. You know, management reporter, or those there. We even have some people that might still be using FRX, but there's the financial type reports, balance sheet, income statement reports, those kind of things. And management reporter is the out-of-the-box reporter that comes with it, but we're also going to look at a couple other alternatives that are available for doing financial reporting. And then finally, there's the other types of reports, the ones I always call the fun reports. You know, again, I dropped Excel reports into that one because we can do dashboards in Excel. We're going to look at SQL reporting services. I'm a huge fan of SQL reporting services, and also look at Power BI. That Power BI is becoming more and more Microsoft's de facto reporting tool across most of its platform. So we're going to just take a quick look at a couple of things with Power BI. So real quick, Kate already kind of introduced me. I am Dave Feenstra. I am the director of our Business Solutions and Technology Department. And all that really means is I don't get my hands dirty with a lot of client things as much as I used to. I have been a GP consultant and solutions architect for over 15 years. And my 15 to 20 years, actually, I should probably update that. And my focus has always been around making GP do what it's not supposed to do. And a lot of that is around reporting and custom integrations. And I actually did come from a former client, and like GP so much, I decided to get into the business. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So again, our first type of report that we're looking at is our inquiry tools. And we're going to look at Smart List and Smart List Designer. A lot of you might also be using Smart List Builder from E1. We're going to be looking at kind of a combination of those. We're going to look at Smart View, the Excel reports, and also again standard GP reports. So the first tool that we're going to look at here is the Smart List. Smart List being built into GP, everybody uses it, and every once in a while I still get a client that just tells me, you know what, I don't use Smart List. And if that's the case, then please give us a call, because if you're not using Smart List, you're really missing out on one of the great features of GP and a quick way to access that data. The pros around Smart List is that it is a standard module in GP. It is very easy to use. It can be used on homepage reminders, so it can keep track of when payables are due or what payables are due today or due this week, and you can actually put reminders on your homepage around those. You can double click on any of the smart list records that are in the screen, and it drills into transaction level tables. It drills into any other screens that are related to the transaction you're looking at. Many of you are probably using Smart List Builder from E1. Smart List Builder is a fantastic product, but Microsoft started creating their own version of it called Smart List Designer. And with Designer, it does make it a little bit more flexible. I used to have a few clients that always told me that Smart List was always one field away from really being a Smart List. And with the addition of Designer, you can now add that one field that you just couldn't quite get before. And one of the nice things is that it does work within the web client. For those of you who are using the web browser version of GP, it does allow you to use it right within the browser. And we're going to actually take a quick look at the web client while we're in here today. So I just had to throw a quick tip in there. There is a function in Smart List called Export Solutions. And I don't have a lot of clients using it, but we might take a look at that if we have some time. So some of the cons of Smart List are not knowing what data you're looking for. There's always a lot of columns when you go to search and add columns of data. There's a ton of columns in there, and some of them have very similar names, and so there's a lot of hunting and pecking that goes on in there. And then if you're also running large amounts of data in Smart List, it can be very slow to generate. We had some clients that would be trying to generate standard reports with 50,000 records in it. Well, you'd set Smart List going, you could go get your cup of coffee, come back, and then you would want to export it to Excel. So you'd hit export, you'd go get another cup of coffee, come back, and maybe it would finally be done. So it is a little slow when you're using large amounts of data. So it does work best for smaller inquiries. When you're filtering your data, Smart List caps you at 4 search criteria. I do have a little bonus slide that we're going to look at that allows you to kind of use those 4 search criteria to the max, and you can actually add some wildcards and maybe even extend it. And then if you did run your entire Smart List and you decided you needed another column, you do need to add that column, but then it's got to go through a full refresh again of all of its data. So some of that can be a little time consuming, but once you do get a Smart List set up that's usable, it's generally pretty straightforward. And I mentioned we had a little bonus information. Many people don't realize that wildcards can be used in the search criteria for Smart List. So a lot of times, you already have the ability to search, begins with or contains, but what if I wanted everything except something? And that's what a lot of these wildcards do. And we'll look at a couple of examples of that when we get into GP. So the second tool I wanted to take a quick look at was Smart View. And Smart View is a product from E1. And the pros of Smart View is that it is very fast. It is a Smart List type product in that it does give you tables of data and it's a direct inquiry on the database, but it is very fast. And you can do grouping and subtotals right within the window of Smart View. One of the biggest things that it does is that you have an unlimited number of search criteria. You can build as complex a search statement as you want. And then adding and removing columns is a matter of dragging and dropping. So and they're all right there. So even though the names are still kind of the same issue as Smart List, it's easier to kind of hunt and peck and find what data that you want. And one of the nice things of Smart View is that there is an external Smart View client. So if you did have clients or customers or other users within your organization that you wanted to be able to provide an inquiry access to for GP, but you didn't want to actually give them a GP license or have them in your system, there is an external client that people can use just to query the data. Can't do any damage. You can't write any data back to GP. So it's actually a great tool. So the cons of SmartView is it is an additional purchase. It is an extra cost. It's not terribly expensive. And the other issue is it does not work in the web client. It is an add-on to GP, and it is not web client compatible. So if you're not using the web client, that's probably not that big of an issue. But for some people, it would be. So the next type of inquiry tool we're going to look at is Excel reports. And some of the pros, it's Excel, right? We're all accountants. Who doesn't love Excel? And Excel is a very familiar tool. All of the data is already there. So out of the box, GP provides a whole series of Excel reports that have a lot of data, just kind of core data included. You can go through and edit those queries and add additional fields if you wanted to. You can even edit the queries themselves in order to pull data in from other modules. One of the nice things with Excel is that you can just put charts and graphs right into the spreadsheet. And they will be, you can add them in there and they will automatically refresh anytime you open that workbook again. And then in addition, new worksheets can be created if you wanted to create your own custom ones, and they can be exposed in GP so that any of your GP users would be able to access them. And as long as they're saved in the right location where GP is looking for them, then anybody can see them. So we'll get to that as well. The cons, there's not a ton of cons to it. It is adding additional columns and creating new reports can be a little cumbersome, but for the most part, the Excel reports that Microsoft provides out of the box are pretty wide ranging, and so they will. They've taken what some of the most common queries are, and that's what they've turned into Excel reports. And the other con is obviously it doesn't work through the web client. Since it is Excel based, there's not a whole lot we can do about that. So you would need to be on your network where it would have access to the actual database. All right, and then finally, the last type of inquiry tool would just be some of the standard GP reports that are out there. And the pros of those is everybody knows where they are, right? They've been in GP since the beginning of time. They can be added to the My Reports homepage section. They're built into all areas of GP, and they include some data that's not easily duplicated by just a query out of SmartList or Excel. Examples of that would be some of the historical age trial balances. Depending on what date you pick, that report is actually doing some calculations to come up with what was that balance at that time. And so behind the scenes, it's actually maybe backing out some payments or backing out some invoices that have come in after the fact. And so those are relatively complex reports. The cons of that are, that data is really nice, but has anybody actually tried to export one of those CSV files to Excel? In your print box, you can go to screen, you can go to printer, and then you can go to file. And so we've had a number of clients who have tried to export those out to a CSV file and then open it in Excel, and then they waste the rest of their day trying to reformat it in Excel, right? But like the TV commercials say, but wait, who says you can't teach an old dog new tricks? There is a VBA module that we can plug in behind there, and we're going to take a quick look at that as well. So with that, I am going to pop over to GP, and we're going to take a look at a few of the items that we discussed here. So, and then one note is, as Kate mentioned early in the session, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. I personally like answering a lot of questions, and that's one of the downsides with webinars is you don't get a lot of that customer interaction. But if you have any questions, please feel free to put that in the chat box, and we will get them addressed as soon as we can. All right, so with that, I'm going to jump over to GP and get back to my home page here. And the first one that we wanted to look at was Smart List. All right, so everybody has Smart List. So this is Smart List. Everybody's using it. You've got all of your modules over here. We can go into financial, list out your accounts. If you wanted to do any filtering, you do have the search function up here. And again, here's where Smart List has just the 4 search criteria that are in here. So I have, I can look for where my account description contains something, begins. I have some functionality here, and so I can get at a lot of what I need. But this is where some of the wildcard functions come into play, and this slide deck is going to be available on the website here after we're done. And so you will have the slide that kind of gives all the cheat sheets for the wildcards. But for an example of one of those, if we go down to purchasing and go to the vendors, so by default, I just get a list of all my vendors, and I can sort it by vendor ID, vendor name. And again, as I mentioned, we can do drill downs. I can double click on the vendor and I can go get back into the vendor card. So that makes Smart List a very powerful navigation tool in addition to a query tool. But one of the areas that not a lot of people do is using the wildcards. And the first one would be maybe trying to track down some of your accounts. So I've got all these accounts up here. And if I look at this one, I can say, well, maybe I want it where my last segment is 04. Now I could do it either as it contains 04, as I have here, or if I just did that second one, I might get things that had the first segment of 000, 001, or I might pick up an 04 in the first segment. But if all I wanted was something with an 04 in the last segment, I can use a wildcard in the middle. And I'm going to actually take this one out. And if I hit OK, it's going to give me all accounts where I have an 04 at the end. If I wanted to, whoops, wrong button, meant to hit search. And that's going to pop open Smart List Builder. So if I go back to search, if I just had it as %04, now I'm going to get every account. Oh, it looks like I don't have anything with an 04. Let me go back to search here. If I just took the dash out and then hit OK, I'm going to grab all accounts where I have an 04 anywhere in that account string. So you can see this first one, I got an 04 in the second segment. And so that really lets me tailor my search down by using all the wildcards. Second example would be like a list of vendors. So in this Smart List, I've got all of my vendors, but I'm filtering down to just vendors that begin with an A through L, right? So if I didn't have this second criteria in here, I'm going to get all of my vendors A through L. Doesn't matter what they are. But what if I didn't want the C's or the D's? I don't really have a clean way of saying grab this range but exclude these. So if I go to my search and I say I want my vendor ID not only between A through L, but I'm going to use the not equal symbol, which is the caret that says I want everything that does not begin with B and does not begin with D. And now if I hit OK, you'll see I got A's, C's, and E's, but I don't have any of the B's and the D's. So that's excluding them from the list. And again, there's a number of wildcards that you can use. There's a single character wildcard. The % sign is a whole string wildcard. You got the caret, you got the brackets that will give you things in a list. If I wanted just the C's and the D's, and I took, or the B's and the D's, and I took the carets out, then that's all I'm going to get, are B and D. And normally I wouldn't be able to do that because it's not continuous in its list. So, you know, I could do between B and D, but then I'm going to get any of the C's. So there's a number of those wildcards that can be used in there. And then with Smart List Designer or Smart List Builder, you can then modify any of your Smart Lists. Now I happen to have Smart List Designer or Smart List Builder open here, but you can go into any of your Smart Lists and you can start modifying them, add additional tables and so on. And you can even create your own custom views in SQL Server and create a whole Smart List out of that. So now you're not limited by what Microsoft gives you out of the box. So an example of a large Smart List might be the account transactions. And so you see right now I'm capped at 1,000 and it's going to stop there, completed. But if I had, let's say I had a whole bunch, I can just go here and it's going to slowly count up, and I could get my stopwatch out and I could calculate how long this is going to take. But this is where Smart View will come into play. So you see I'm still counting up to 3,000, I'm not even 4,000 yet. So we'll close Smart List and let's pop open Smart View. And again, Smart View is a paid add-on from E1. We have quite a few clients that are actually using it just because of the speed and flexibility that it gives you. So you can see it looks like Smart List, but if I went into financial and went into account transactions, it pops it right open and it says, all right, I only had the 1,000, but if I switch that to, you know, the same value that I had in the other one, and I just wanted to grab all of them, they are so proud of how fast their stuff comes. They even give you an elapsed time down here. So here I pulled 22,000 lines, and it took it 0.83 seconds to do that. So a little bit faster than Smart List. It also allows you to send things out to Excel. Now there's prompts you for saving it first. So it's exporting that data, and then it's going to pop open that spreadsheet. And there it is. So quite a time saver if you're trying to move a lot of data around just using standard Smart List. So the other part of Smart View, get that back up here. Oops, I'm giving you previews. So the other part of pulling that up is the number of search criteria that you get. So if I wanted to edit a filter, I can come in here and I can start adding as many as I wanted. Journal entry equals this. And I can just keep adding more and more criteria. I can do ands, or I can flip to an or. And I have as many criteria as I could possibly need in here. And you see I have not and, I can add different groups. I can get as creative of a search criteria as I can possibly come up with here. So I'm not limited by the 4, and I don't necessarily need to use the wildcards in here either. When you first install Smart View, it will copy all of your stored favorites over to Smart View, but then going forward, you would then create your own favorites in SmartView, and they would be stored here and not go back into the standard Smart List. Another one of the options that we have here in SmartView that we don't have in Smart List is if I wanted to do summaries by account, I can just grab the account up into the summary and I can start getting summary totals. If I wanted to do it by transaction date and account number, I can get all of these subtotals in here. And the nice thing is if I throw this out to Excel and it opens up, I'm going to get it out in outline format, just like what I saw here. So you see I have it where I can expand and collapse things in Excel. So it's pretty slick, We have a number of clients using SmartView. Works pretty well.
Before you move on, Dave,
Yep.
there's a question from Jamie
Okay.
on how do you open the Smart List Builder window?
The Smart List Builder window, when you are in Smart List, and you open either Smart List Builder if you're using E1 or Smart List Designer the same way. You have this Modify button up here. If I'm in, I'll just go to Account Summary, and I go to Modify, I am going to open the Smart List Builder Design window. I can do it there, or if you have Smart List Builder installed, you will have a menu option for it here. And this will open the exact same screen. The advantage to doing it through Smart List is if you wanted to use one of your existing Smart Lists as the basis for your new Smart List, you would just open it up from Smart List, and it would already have that Smart List loaded so that you can use it as kind of your core. So if I wanted to do account summary, but I wanted to just add a field to it, I'm in here on account summary and I hit modify. Now I've already got that Smart List loaded and I can add any other table that I want. Whereas if I opened it through the menus, I would be starting from scratch.
Awesome. And then, yep, Jamie said that answered a question. Thank you. And then
okay, very good.
Anne asked if SmartView is available if you're using the web client.
SmartView is not available on the web client.
Okay.
Now, I got to put a caveat on that. If you are running the web client and your server is hosted internally, now, and the only reason I bring this up is because Anne, I know how your setup is. If you are remote into a server, you can run the web client. The web client and the full rich desktop client are not exclusive. You can run them both. In fact, I've got them both open. Here's GP, and I have the web client open as well. So it's not like they're exclusive. And if you're doing it in here, I could still have SmartView on my desktop, but still be running GP through the web client.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay. So let's move on to Excel reports. Hopefully, people are using the Excel reports because they're pretty cool. I always call them pre-built smart lists, right? So I'm on financial, and if you have Excel reports deployed, you're going to have the menu option up here for Excel reports. And when I click on that, I'm going to get a list of all of the reports that are currently deployed. And I got a lot of them. And one strange thing that Microsoft does is they list a report and a connection in the same list. What you really want is the one that starts with reports. So the nice thing is I can just come in here, and if I double click on it, it's going to open Excel, and there's my accounts. This is my account smart list, or essentially it's an account smart list, but it's already in Excel. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to wait for any data to export into Excel. It's a predefined query that's nested in Excel. And I have the same thing with, if I went to account transactions. I can come down, let me count transactions default. I double click on that. And here's a whole bunch of account transactions. Now, one of the nice things that I can do in these is I can modify them. So in this case, if I wanted to put a pivot table in here, and I'm going to put it on a separate tab, I can say, all right, I want my account number to be on my rows, and I want debit and credit to be my sum tables. Then I can add a calculated field, and I can put a filter on here as well. I want to filter by the transaction date, something like that. So I can put this all on an existing spreadsheet, and then let's say I want to save it as a different name because I don't want to mess with the core. If I put it into the default location, and I'm going to call it Connect Symposium. So now I have a different spreadsheet, but it's saved in the same location. I don't have to go tell all my users, hey, I got a new one out there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to refresh that Excel reports list. And I probably picked on a bad one to refresh it with, but that's all right. So if I go back into my Excel reports, you will see I now have one out here called Account Transactions Connect Symposium. So I can just tell my users, go there. Here's the spreadsheet. So now when I double click that, I'm opening my new one that has my pivot table and everything else built in it. So those are pretty nice. And in addition, you can build your own, because all of these Excel spreadsheets are only using a predefined query into the SQL database. And if you have some a little bit of coding knowledge or know the tables a little bit, you can come in here and edit this connection and add and remove fields however you see fit. So. All right. And then some of just the standard GP reports. I just wanted to show one thing on the GP reports. Everybody is familiar with, running the trial balances and whatnot. And quite a few of our clients, we have plugged this add-in in there. But what we were seeing is a lot of our clients are trying to run trial balance reports. And what would happen is they would come in here, and I'll explain this in just a second, but I could print this. And if I'm going to print it to the screen, my destination is just screen, I end up with this 22-page report, and I get GP crashing for some reason. So that's not normally supposed to happen, and it didn't happen when I ran this morning. So we'll just log in again. And so here's a quick lesson on clearing your user ID when GP goes down. All right. So anyway, what we built was a plugin that will take that data as it's coming up on the screen, and it'll actually write it out to a spreadsheet in a nice format. So if I go back to trial balance, and I'm going to pick that same one, and this time I'm going to pick no subtotals, and you see my destination. This is where I would say I don't have anything up my sleeve. I'm wearing a short sleeve shirt anyway, so I'm only printing it to the screen. But now when I print this, it's not only going to generate the screen print, but behind the scenes, it's actually creating an Excel spreadsheet with all of the data that's contained on the screen. And so this is where, you see it just popped up there. So there's the spreadsheet that it just created. So all it did was it took the data that was on the screen. You can see I got a little something going on with the account number here, and just put it out into a spreadsheet. So that is a little plugin that we have made free for our clients. If you're interested in having that installed, I know a lot of you probably already have that installed, but if you're interested in that, please send Kate an email and we can get that coordinated. So with that, let's move on to the next type of report. So financial reporting is obviously the big thing. You got an ERP system, right? You want to build a balance sheet and an income statement. So there's one main tool that Microsoft includes, and that's Management Reporter. And anybody who's been using FRX or even Management Reporter for a while knows how it's structured. Use rows, columns, and trees. So the pros with Management Reporter is it is free. It's included with GP, you know, free's got the air quotes on it. But it uses the familiar layout with the rows, columns, trees, as I mentioned. And it's relatively easy to create a nice financial report. That's what it does. It's built for that. And so they have in recent versions made it so that reports are deployed to a web viewer. And so the reports from Management Reporter are actually viewed in a browser. I think it looks very clean. It's very nice looking. And we've been able to even deploy that for people who are having GP hosted remotely. We can make those reports accessible to anybody from the outside if they have the proper permissions. So that's a nice feature. So that's why I said it can be configured to allow report access from outside your standard network. And links to that report can be created in multiple locations. If you're running an internal SharePoint site, you can actually write that link to the report directly to SharePoint. You can have it automatically email out. You can do whatever you want to do with those links, and they all feed back into the server and grab the most recent version of the report that's been generated. Some of the cons of Management Reporter is that it can only read general ledger data. And only things that are in the GL can be read. You can't use Management Reporter to report on customers or vendor activity, that kind of stuff. It is an on-site installation, so it cannot be used in the web client. But again, if you were able to deploy those reports and have them emailed out, then it doesn't matter where you are, you can access those reports. And that's because it is not a true web application. And so in order to generate and author new reports, you would need to be using a remote desktop in a hosted environment. So we'll take a quick look at that. But a couple other products that I wanted to look at, and this one in particular is an additional cost, and it's one called Active Reporter from a company called Intuitive. The pros is, again, it works in Excel. Who doesn't love Excel, right? It has its own reporting tool. So it's got what they call the active trial balance. So you can actually use their tool to do smart list type inquiries on the general ledger. You can see all your data without being in GP, and it is very fast. It's like Smart View, where it's just tapping directly into the data and showing your stuff. And then you can build any custom report for the general ledger data. However, it can only access general ledger data because it is not a full query into the database. So again, if you're looking for customer and vendor reports, Active Reporter is a financial reporter, but it is very smooth. One of the reasons that it is so fast is that it actually creates I'm going to loosely call it a shadow copy of your general ledger data in another database, and it keeps that synced up so that when people are doing heavy inquiries on the general ledger, it's not dragging down the performance of your normal SQL server. So we're going to we'll take a few minutes and look at Active Reporter in just a second. And then the last one from the financial report side is Jet Reports. Jet Reports Express Edition is a free version of Jet Reports that allows you to build your reports directly in Excel. And you're probably seeing a theme here. Who doesn't love Excel, right? When you're trying to write something to appeal to the accounting crowd, probably putting it in Excel is a safe bet. One of the advantages of Jet Reports is you can access all the data tables. It is a link into the database. It's not looking purely at general ledger data. So you can build queries against customer data, vendor data, sales, purchasing, whatever. It has a pretty flexible, intuitive design, and you can build custom Excel reports from any data in GP. So even if you're running like analytical accounting, or if you're running grants management or one of those other modules within GP, you can report on any of that data. The downside to JET reports is that there is no user level security in it. So if you have, and again, I have asterisks on there because there is an upgraded version of JET reports that does have user level security and does allow transaction drillbacks. I was just showing features of the Express edition, which anybody can just go out and download and play with. And it does come with some sample reports that work against the sample company in GP. But it is a very good tool, and we'll take a quick look at that here in just a second. There's a couple of other options out there that are paid options. And one is Solver from BI360. And actually, they recently have just branded it as Solver. They're not using the BI360 name anymore. So it is just called Solver. And that is a tool that does link directly into the database. And it lets you build a lot of reports and dashboards directly in Excel. But it also uses Power BI to let you take those reports and publish them to the web so that you can share them across any other or with anybody else who has a Power BI license. We are a Solver reseller. If you're interested in taking a look at that, please let us know. Other tools that are out there, there's, I should just flip through these because they are very similar. Budget Maestro, Profix, and Journix. I know we have a few clients that are using each one of these, and they are great at what they do. Very much very solid reporting tools. A lot of them have some budgeting functionality built right into it. So those are also great tools. So if you are looking for some other paid options, and I put etc. out there because there's a few more that are out there. So with that, let's just take a quick look at those. So Management Reporter, first one, everybody knows Management Reporter, right? So I'm just going to look at the balance sheet, and let's look at a couple of the these reports. So these are tied into the Fabricam company on GP. So I'm going to set that to 2017. So now it does, probably many of you, if you're using Management Reporter, you're looking at the reports in Management Reporter's report viewer. Now, if you go under the options, there is the option to use the report viewer as the default viewer. And if you have that turned off, it will deploy these to a browser. So if I generate this report, so we'll let this come up here. And I see I got a little warning there. But it is going to come up in my default browser. And look at that, I have no data. So again, this was working earlier, but it does generate in a browser. It is very clean. It allows all of the same drill backs and everything that is available when you're using standard Management Reporter. And actually, I think I need this to be probably a later period. And we'll set this to that. And that should generate some data. And actually, it looks like it went back to 2014. It probably won't. But anyway, the point is that if you're using Management Reporter, take a look at that web viewer. You can, when it comes up, I'll let this one come up again, and it will have a URL up here. Unfortunately, I'm not getting any data, but this URL is a link that can be emailed, shared anywhere within your organization. So it does work pretty well. So I'm going to look at Active Reporter here a minute. So Active Reporter again, it uses Excel, and it uses a series of formulas in Excel that you can build. When you install Active Reporter, it actually puts another tab within Excel. See, I got standard stuff in here, but I do have this activity tab, and this allows me to build all of these reports, and I can do drill backs on them. I can actually drill into the detail behind them. This is their drill down explorer. So you can see right here, I do have all of my data, and I can drill all the way into the detail behind that transaction. And again, I don't have to be a GP user. And here I've gotten all the way into my detail or detail for that particular transaction. You see, they build their own inquiry screens to really drill into all of that data. One of their big selling points is their Active Explorer. And this, again, is an inquiry into all of their GL data. So I'm sitting here, I'm just looking at the GP data, and a lot like SmartView, it's just querying that data as I'm going through. So I can look at journal detail, I can double click into any of these, and it gives that inquiry function without having to necessarily be in GP at the time. Another nice thing is these reports that are out here, I can deploy those and make them available to anybody. I don't have to tell them, hey, it's stored on the network in such and such a location. If I deploy it through my Active Reporter, I will come in here. Where'd it go? Okay, so anyway, all of those, the Excel reports, they're supposed to be showing up here under my reports tab, but all I see is the predefined ones. But so if I look at any of these reports, they're going to pop up here a minute. Give that one just a second. That's, oh, there it goes. So I can give it my the credentials that it needs. I can hit preview, design, showcase, and I will preview that. And it's going to open up in Excel. And actually what it's going to open up is the spreadsheet that I have open right here. So, but they have a lot of really cool features in here. If I wanted to do a new spreadsheet, I can come in and just make a brand new Excel spreadsheet, blank workbook. And if I come to the Activity Explorer, I got to connect it. So I'm going to connect it into my Fabricam company. And then I can start using some of their predefined statements in here. If I wanted to have an income statement, and how do I want it split up? Well, I want it summarized by department. So it's going to generate that. So here's my income statement. And then when I deploy this, then it would actually generate all of my data. But I can very quickly set up a lot of these, and then they're all editable after the fact. So that is Active Reporter. The other one is Jet Reports. Now, Jet Reports, they have a series of, make sure I find the right one here. They have a whole series of sample reports as well. But just to kind of show how it lays out, is you actually come through and design items. So like what I've done here is a very basic report startup where I've said, okay, I want to start a GL report, and I want this particular column to be, every row is going to be an account, but I want it separated by my segment 1, which in the Fabricam company, I think there's 5 or 6 different segments. And then I can come over here and I can tell it, I want the actual balance for whatever account is contained in this cell over here. So I can go through and use a series of their functions. You'll see I have a couple other things over here. If I go back into this actual, you'll see I'm telling it the date range that I want to look at is in C3 and C4. So I've actually told it, use these fields in order to give yourself a date range, right? So then when I come in here and I go into the report, it's going into GP and it's pulling all of the budget data, the actual data. I can put a calculated variance on there, and you'll see by me splitting it up on the first segment, I get every first segment on different tabs within Excel. And so there's a lot of stuff that you can do there. I'm barely scratching the surface, but I did want to pull up one of their default income statements that you can use. My report obviously looked really ugly, so it's kind of like a cooking show where, you know, they say, well, look at this, you put these ingredients in here, and then they pull the final one out of the oven. This is one that's pulled out of the oven. So they actually have one where, you know, all your formatting is done in Excel. Everybody understands Excel, and it's actually pretty intuitive to get in there to work on it. And again, the Jet Reports Express is free to download and use. If you want one of the higher paid ones, then there is a paid version of Jet that does have more options in it, such as user-based security and some web applications. So, all right. So I'm going to run a little bit over. I apologize, because here I'm on the other reports, and that's why I call this the fun stuff, right? So since I'm not natively an accountant, I find balance sheets and income statements a little bit boring. So that's where we get into SQL reporting services and Power BI. And this is where you can really build whatever you want. You know, you're not limited to general ledger, AP, AR, whatever. So the first one is SQL reporting services. And the pros on it is that it's free if you own SQL Server. So why not use it, right? And then after SQL Reporting 2016, there were a lot of enhancements that Microsoft did to it just because it became one of their default reporting platforms. And we can build just about anything in there. I think a number of people that are on this call have actually done some dashboarding work and whatnot in SQL reporting for you. Security is not controlled within GP, but it can be granted at a very granular level. You know, the key thing that we always see around report security is you want to keep people from accessing payroll data. That's always the number one question is, can they access payroll data? Well, no, with SQL reporting, we can can that. Reports are accessed via a web browser. There are no local installations of SQL reporting. All you have to do is have someone grant the proper permissions on the server and you can get to it. Dynamics GP has a ton of SQL reporting services reports available right out of the box. Last few years, that's all they've been doing is moving canned reports into SQL reporting. In fact, the trial balance that we just looked at, there is a SQL reporting version of it. It has a lot of parameters on it, but there's a SQL reporting version of it. And there is a tool for building reports called Report Builder, and that's accessible directly through the browser. It does do a small download onto your computer, but it's not that complex. And if you really wanted to get technical with it, you can also use the SQL Server data tools, which is actually a stripped down version of Visual Studio, but don't tell anybody, to write reports. So some of the cons of SQL reporting is that you can build any report. And so sometimes knowing exactly where to start and where to get your data can be a bit intimidating, especially if you're using Visual Studio. Visual Studio, you know, the more options you give some people, the more confusing it can be. So Visual Studio allows you to modify and control every last piece of a report, down to the colors of the font that's on there. You can give it conditional underlines, whatever you want to do. And so some of that can be a little overwhelming. And the other side of it is that you need to know how your data is organized. So that's pretty important. Anybody who's ever gone and looked at the tables that are in GP, sometimes it's like in the movie The Matrix, when all the green stuff is coming down your screen. You know, some people say, well, I just see a bunch of gobbledygook. And I'd be like, well, I see general ledger data, I see accounts payable data, whatever. So you got to kind of know how that is all laid out. And it actually has a rhyme and a reason to it. So I've actually done a number of sessions for the National GP user group on SQL reporting and how to connect your data. So if anyone's interested in that, please let me know. So here's a couple of examples of some dashboards that I put together. This particular client wanted all of their dashboards themed. So why not? You know, the IT group has the Batcave expenses. That's what they call themselves. The controller was a Detroit Tigers fan. And so the theme is all in Detroit Tigers colors. And if you click on the little logos, it does bring them to the Major League Baseball scoreboard sites and whatnot. And then obviously somebody was a Miss Pac-Man fan. So we built that one as well. So the key on those is just be creative. Second one I want a quick look at is Power BI. The pros, it is a fantastic visualization tool. They have all kinds of graphs and charts and everything else that come with it. If you wanted to get started with Power BI, it is free. You can download the Power BI desktop for free, and you can get started today. Power BI also makes, it's a great tool for creating dashboards. One of the things that Microsoft has done recently is they have seen that Power BI has a place with visualizations, charts, graphs, and whatnot. And SQL reporting largely gets used for a lot of, you know, in-depth, actual data-heavy reports. I want to see a trial balance. I want to see, you know, an aging. I want to see all that data. And so with the most recent versions of SQL reporting, they've actually combined those, and you can now pin Power BI reports onto a SQL reporting report, or you can pin an SSRS, a SQL reporting report, onto a Power BI dashboard. So with GP 2018, there is a Power BI content pack that's out there, and we'll take a look at some of those. And Excel Power users will appreciate the interface because a lot of it's just very, very table driven. The cons behind Power BI, although the desktop is free, publishing it to your Office 365 account does require an elevated license. So there is an additional cost to get Power BI Pro, but in the big scheme of things, the advantages that you get with being able to share those reports across your entire organization is just absolutely phenomenal. So we've been getting more and more into Power BI. We actually are doing a fair amount with it and really like it. So again, cons are always going to be complexities and being intimidating. But, you know, the best thing to do is to just get in there and work with it. Another one of the cons that I listed was automated report distribution. There has to be a way of synchronizing your data back up to your Power BI site so that all of your reports refresh automatically. And there are some on-prem gateways that are available to do that. But sometimes that can be a little bit of a hindrance. So I'm going to do a quick demo because I'm already over time a little bit. So first off, for SQL reporting services, by default, this is what your SQL reporting services looks like. And if you have it deployed through GP, you will see in each one of your module areas here, you will have reporting services reports. And so what this is actually doing, if I click on that, is it is going out to the company site. And since I'm in financial, it's looking at the financial folder. And it's going to sit here processing for just a second, and then it's going to refresh. Come on, there we go. All right, so then here's a list of all the reports that are out there. And if I wanted to just look at a current balance, I can double click on that, and it's automatically going to launch that report out in SQL reporting services. And here's my current balance by account. So what this is doing is it's looking at all my at key accounts that are out there and just giving me what my current balance is. So this is a very simple report. The nice thing is I can either get to them from within GP, or if I wanted my non-GP users to have access to them, there is an available URL to go out and get them. Now, this just is this way because the name of my server is demos-sql, but this would be the name of whatever server that you guys have on site. And so you'll see I have a folder for each one of my companies. And then within the company folder, I have a folder for each module. And then I have a whole series of reports out here. So if I wanted to look at a trial balance detail, I can take a look at this. I want just a current year. I'm going to grab 17, and I'm just going to grab a subset of accounts. Change this to 17, and I'm going to just sort it by account. And once I view this report, it's going to give me the trial balance detail. And one of the nice things is, I don't know, people who been around for a while, or even I've been hearing it used more and more lately. There's the what you see is what you get concept, WYSIWYG. And I have the option in here of whatever I have on this screen, I can just come in here and export it to Excel. And that's exactly what it is. What you see, and it's going to pop up here. There it is. So now I've run a report out of SQL reporting. I've got it in Excel, got all my data out here, and I'm not even logged into GP. Now, I am, but I don't have to be. So we have a number of clients that are using SQL reporting for deploying reports across the entire organization. So as I mentioned, I have done quite a few sessions at national conferences on SQL reporting and some of the advanced features of it. If you guys are interested in any of those, please let me know, because I personally love the tool. It's great. So I see Kate pop back on. She's probably wanting to hold up a big red stop sign, but I'm going to do 2 seconds on Power BI. It looks like my Power BI desktop might have closed. Nope, here it is. So Power BI. So again, this is Power BI desktop, and same concept necessarily with as with SQL reporting is I first need to know where my data is. So these particular reports, I have these connected into my Dynamics GP database, and I'm pulling account transactions from the GL. I got payables transactions, I got bank balances. I can do whatever I want, pull all these things in there, and now I can start making dashboards out of them. So in this one, you'll see I have balance sheet, P&L. I've built slicers in here. If anybody went to any of the earlier session, I believe it was on Tuesday, that we had a session on that particular one was looking at Business Central and Power BI. But I know that Tom Jablonski gave that session and talked a lot about the slicers. So this is where I can start filtering my entire report based on applying these slicers. If I want to just look at purchasing accounts, I want to look at inventory accounts, the rest of my reports, or the rest of my pieces all filter down to what I'm looking at. So if I take that back off and only want to look at, say, 2017, I can do that. If I only want to look at my cash accounts, I can do that. So it's pretty nice. But in one dashboard here, I have some general ledger data. I have payables data. I can filter this by vendor class because I have that as a slicer. And so I can really dig into my data there. And then as well as having bank transactions. So this just gives me a snapshot of my, my cash balances. And once I have a dashboard the way I would want it, I can then publish this to my Power BI site online. And then I would be able to have any of my users go out and take a look at it, and they will see exactly what I'm looking at. So I will select that. So it is now publishing to my online Power BI site. And once that is completed, I'd be able to go online. Look at that, successful. So now I can click that and it's going to open up. And of course, somehow, okay, there it is. But here I am online in my Power BI dashboard, and I've got my data. So pretty cool. So again, I like Power BI, and it seems like I didn't leave enough time for the really fun stuff. So that is what I have. There's my contact info. You know, I put my Twitter one on there, but I'm not all that active on Twitter. I do more following. So, but every once in a while I retweet some good articles out there. So
Good.
So again, I know from on the SmartList side, you know, we're looking largely at SmartList Builder, but SmartList Designer is free. So anybody who has GP has SmartList Designer, so you can make it do whatever you want to do. You know, again, I referenced the client that always thought it was one field short. They always called it dumb list until SmartList Designer came out. Okay, now we can call it SmartList.
So at this point, I'm going to go ahead
and thank you all for joining us.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate it, and have a great afternoon.
All right. Thank you.